A ship opens beneath an emperor's mother. She falls. Not into a storm, not into battle, into a murder built by her own son. The ceiling above her couch crashes down in the dark. Men rush to tip the vessel. Oars swing. Somebody screams her name. And then the impossible happens. She survives. She claws through freezing black water with one arm, reaches shore bleeding, and sends the emperor a message so calm it sounds insane. She does not accuse him. She does not run. She does not beg. Why would a woman survive her son's assassination attempt and still choose silence? Because this was never just a murder. This was Rome's most poisonous family finally turning on itself. And it gets worse. The boy trying to erase her was only emperor because she had spent years lying, seducing, threatening, and possibly poisoning powerful men to put him on the throne. She made Nero. She taught him what power looked like. She taught him what fear could do. And when he finally used those lessons on her, he did it with terrifying precision. So what do you call that? A son murdering his mother? Or a creation trying to kill its creator? Before dawn, 3 men would enter her bedroom. By sunrise, Rome would be told she had plotted against the emperor. By the end of that lie, something inside Nero would break forever. And if you stay with me, you'll understand why killing Agrippina didn't free him. It trapped him. This is the historian fact. And the story begins with a teenager being handed the world. Year 54. A nervous boy with soft features and a performer's vanity steps into imperial light. The Praetorian Guard salutes. Rome bows. The Senate accepts what's already been arranged. Nero is emperor. He is 16. And behind him stands the real architect of the moment, his mother, Agrippina. Roman sources preserve a chilling detail from that first night. When asked for the watchword, Nero reportedly gives a phrase meaning the best of mothers. The words sound affectionate. They are also political. Everyone in the palace knows he is there because she forced the path open for him. Hours earlier, the old Emperor Claudius had been alive. Now he is a body on a couch. The most famous version says mushrooms began it. Another poison may have finished it. Ancient writers disagree on details, but they agree on the larger truth. Suspicion fell hard on Agrippina. Claudius's own son Britannicus was shut away while the succession machinery moved. Doors closed. Timing mattered. The guard had to be secured. The announcement had to come before resistance could think. That is how power usually looks at the top. Not majestic, fast, dirty, already decided. And Agrippina had become a master of that world long before Nero wore purple. But that wasn't the worst part. She had learned politics as a survival language. She was born into the Julio-Claudian dynasty, where being close to power meant living inside a family that devoured itself. Her father, Germanicus, was adored by soldiers and loved by the people. Then he died suddenly in the east under a cloud of poisoning rumors. Her mother was later humiliated, imprisoned, brutalized, and starved to death after defying an emperor. Her brother Caligula exiled her. Family members vanished. Husbands died, brothers died, sisters died. By the time Agrippina was still a young woman, Rome had already taught her a lesson most people never learn. Love does not protect you near a throne. Only leverage does. So she became leverage with a heartbeat. She returned from exile and started climbing. Not openly at first. Quietly. Marriage. Alliances. Fathers. Information. Positioning. Then, faster. She married her uncle, the Emperor Claudius. A scandal, yes. Also a strategic masterpiece. She persuaded him to adopt her son ahead of his own natural heir. She brought key men into Nero's orbit, including Burrus and Seneca. She secured the title Augusta. She even had herself represented on imperial coinage in a way that announced an extraordinary female proximity to power. Rome understood the message. She was not merely the emperor's wife. She was operating like a co-ruler. Think about the psychology of that household. A teenage boy grows up hearing that he is destined for greatness. But the doors only open because his mother keeps opening them. The robes, her work, the tutors, her choice, the future, her design. How does a boy become a man under that shadow? He doesn't. Not cleanly. Not if every mirror reminds him he was manufactured. At first, Nero needed her. She had experience. He had a title. For a moment, the arrangement worked. The early years of his reign looked restrained compared to what was coming. Seneca and Burrus stabilized government. Agrippina still radiated authority. The empire could pretend the machine was functioning. But family systems built on control do not age well. The mother who creates the king eventually collides with the man inside him. And in Nero, that collision had fuel, vanity, appetite, humiliation, resentment. He did not merely want pleasure, he wanted independence to be seen. That is when the private war began. It may have started over women, it definitely deepened through shame. Nero's affairs became symbols. Agrippina reportedly opposed his attachment to Acte. Later, Poppaea Sabina would sharpen the wound even further. To a young ruler obsessed with image, maternal interference was not just irritating, it was emasculating. Every correction made him feel smaller in front of the court, and then came the scene that should have terrified everyone. Britannicus, Claudius's real son, still alive, still dangerous, still a living reminder that Nero's legitimacy had been arranged, not inherited cleanly. At a banquet, the boy is given a drink. He collapses. Nero dismisses it coolly, as if the room is overreacting to something routine. Britannicus dies. Ancient writers blame Nero. Now pause. Imagine Agrippina watching that happen, not just watching a boy die, watching her son use the same political logic she had used to build him. That is the psychological pivot. Until then, she may still have believed she controlled the monster. After Britannicus, she has to recognize something unbearable. He has started learning too well. Small line, huge consequence. The lessons are leaving the teacher's hands. From there, the relationship turns poisonous. Nero begins reducing her influence. He pushes her away from the center of court. Her access narrows. The signals multiply. The son no longer wants guidance. He wants oxygen. And in palaces, distance is rarely just emotional. It is tactical. Then, according to Suetonius, he tries poison more than once. And that should have been the clean solution. Silent, deniable, elegant in the Roman way. Except Agrippina does not die. Ancient writers claim she had protected herself with antidotes and defensive caution. Whether every detail is literal matters less than the effect. Nero learns that even murder is difficult when the target is a woman who has spent years expecting betrayal. She tastes danger before others smell it. So poison fails. What do you do when your emperor and your mother refuses to become a corpse? You escalate. This is where the competitor's script slows a little, but the underlying material is actually brutal if you visualize it correctly. Agrippina is not just threatened with death, she is subjected to degradation. Her protective entourage weakens. Her place in palace ritual erodes. Doors that open for her begin closing. Men who once needed her now take instructions to redirect around her. Charges and whispers emerge. The point is not merely to inconvenience her. The point is to force her to feel the new order physically, to make her wait, to make her answer, to make her understand that in Rome, visibility is oxygen and he can thin the air. So she adapts because of course she does. She goes quiet. That silence is one of the darkest parts of the entire story. A weaker person screams publicly. A reckless person strikes back too early. Agrippina does neither. She understands the arithmetic. The guard serves the emperor in practice. The Senate serves survival, and public accusation without force behind it is just elegant suicide. So she stores the insult, stores the humiliation, stores the knowledge, and Nero understands exactly what that means. Silence from an ordinary enemy is relief. Silence from Agrippina is deferred danger. She knows he tried. He knows she knows. And now they are living inside a house where nothing is spoken and everything is lethal. Can you imagine eating dinner in that atmosphere? Every servant becomes a possible listener. Every message becomes bait. Every invitation becomes a question. Is this reconciliation or staging? That is when the next plan appears. Not poison, not rumor, mechanics. According to ancient accounts, a plot is prepared involving her bedroom ceiling. If she sleeps in the wrong place, weight comes down and crushes her. Again, the method matters psychologically. This is no longer about simply removing an obstacle. It is about designing certainty. Nero is trying to eliminate the human variable. No confession, no witness, no messy confrontation, just structure collapsing in the night. But the trap fails. She avoids the room. Somebody warned her or she sensed enough danger to change habit. Either way, she lives. And now the stakes become terrifying, because a failed murder is not neutral. It creates knowledge. She now knows this isn't temper. It isn't palace gossip. It isn't an impulsive son acting out. It is a campaign. And campaigns do not stop because the first machine malfunctions. They refine. Enter Poppaea Sabina. She matters because she attacks exactly where Nero is weakest, male identity. Roman politics was drenched in performance. To rule was to be seen ruling. Poppaea reportedly needles the same insecurity again and again. Are you emperor, or are you still a boy under your mother's hand? Whose bed do you control? Whose house is this? Whose will matters? Cruel questions. Effective questions. Because the most dangerous people are often not the most powerful. They are the most ashamed. Nero doesn't just want Agrippina gone because she is politically risky. He wants the feeling gone. The feeling of still being made by her. So the ship is planned. And this plan is beautiful in the ugliest possible way. He invites her to Baia, a place of leisure, warm water, villas, pleasure, reconciliation. The emotional cruelty begins here. He does not summon her like an executioner. He welcomes her like a son. He greets her warmly, dines with her, stages affection in public, lets witnesses see tenderness. Ancient writers even describe physical intimacy in the farewell gestures of closeness so inappropriate and theatrical, they feel designed to confuse the emotional register completely. This is how high-level betrayal works. It doesn't come wearing a knife. It comes smiling. At the dock, a special vessel awaits. A gift, apparently. A luxury return trip under the stars. Imagine Agrippina standing there. Did she trust him? Probably not completely. Did she realize every detail? Probably not yet. Did she understand that in dynastic politics, surviving one plot can make the next one more desperate? Absolutely. And still she boards. Why? Maybe because refusing openly would be its own declaration of war. Maybe because power had taught her to gamble on nerve. Maybe because at some level she still believes she could outplay him. Or maybe the most disturbing answer is the simplest. She knew danger so well it had become normal. The ship moves into the bay. Lights of shore shrink. The sea is calm. That detail matters. No storm, no chaos, no accident hiding in weather. What happens next is engineered. Halfway out, the trap activates. A weighted structure above her is released. One attendant is crushed. The crew shifts. The vessel is meant to break, roll, and finish the job in confusion. Another woman aboard cries out, claiming to be Agrippina, perhaps thinking the title will save her. It kills her instead. The sailors rush the voice. Oars, hooks. In the dark, the wrong woman is beaten to death because she says the right name. That is one of the most horrifying details in the entire story, not just because it is violent, because it reveals the operational truth of the plan. Anyone close enough to confirm her identity can become collateral. And Agrippina hears it, in the water. Wounded, silent, that silence again. She does not announce herself. She understands instantly what the ship was, not a failed accident. A murder machine. Now imagine the mental state. Cold sea, shoulder injured. Night swallowing the coast, men nearby trying to correct the failure. What does a human mind do in that moment? It becomes animal, not ideological, not imperial, not maternal, primitive, breathe, hide, move, survive. She swims. Ancient accounts say she made it to safety with help from small boats after covering part of the distance herself. The image is cinematic because it is so obscene. The emperor's mother, architect of a dynasty, reduced to a bleeding figure in open water, surviving not through rank but through raw instinct. That should have saved her. It does not, because surviving the trap creates the final problem. She knows. And if she speaks first, Nero's image cracks. If Nero moves first, he can still write the script. So what does she do when she reaches land? This is where the story becomes almost unbearably tense. She does not raise Rome. She does not run to the Praetorians. She does not send a public accusation into the city. She sends Nero a controlled message acknowledging the incident without exposing it outright. Read that psychologically. She is offering him an exit, a last quiet arrangement. I know. You know I know. Let us both pretend otherwise and avoid mutual destruction. It is brilliant. It is also fatal, because it tells Nero two things at once. First, she understands the truth. Second, she is still trying to negotiate from intelligence, and that means she is still dangerous. When news arrives that she has survived, Nero panics. Not theatrically, existentially. The same man who can plan a sabotage ship now freezes because reality has returned unscripted. The problem with indirect murder is that failure leaves time for consequences. Ancient writers describe him sleepless, agitated, desperate. Seneca is called. Burrus is consulted. Anacetus, the man tied to the naval plan, is still available. And now, another ugly truth about Rome emerges. There are crimes powerful people commit. Then there are crimes institutions decide to absorb. Burrus reportedly resists using the guard directly against Agrippina, not out of moral purity alone, but because her lineage still matters. She is Germanicus's daughter. That name carries emotional voltage. The official military body may hesitate, so the solution changes again. No open state execution. Private kill. Private lie. Public cover. Nero takes a messenger from Agrippina's side and turns him into a prop. A weapon is planted. Treason is staged. Suddenly, the story can be flipped. The emperor was the target. The mother was the conspirator. The state is merely defending itself. Watch the logic here. He does not just need her dead, he needs her narratively guilty, because a dead mother is scandal. A dead traitor is policy. That lie matters almost as the stabbing. Night. Agrippina is at her villa. Maybe exhausted, definitely aware, almost certainly expecting something. Boots hit the ground outside, men enter, servants scatter, doors crash. One lamp burns inside her chamber. If you were her, what would you be thinking then? That the negotiation failed. That blood is coming. That your son chose fear over retreat. Ancient writers say a maid is with her at first. Then even that presence starts dissolving. Some versions preserve a chilling exchange implying abandonment in the final seconds. And this is where the story stops being imperial and becomes intimate horror. Three men in a room. One aging woman on a couch. One dynasty collapsing down to muscle and steel. The first blow lands with a club. Not noble, not ceremonial, crude, practical. The kind of violence that strips away all illusion of civilization. Then the sword comes out. Agrippina understands. This is it. No court. No speech. No recovery. Only the body. And here, in one last hideously symbolic gesture, she turns the murder into an accusation. Ancient tradition preserves some version of words directing the blow toward the womb that bore Nero. Think about that. In her final instant, she forces the murder back to its origin. If you are going to destroy me, destroy the place that made you. That is why the moment lasts. Not because it is merely violent, because it is psychologically perfect. The womb becomes evidence. The son cannot kill the mother without also condemning himself. She is stabbed repeatedly, finished in private, burned without honor. And by morning, Rome receives the official version. Agrippina plotted. Agrippina was discovered. Agrippina died by her own guilt. Senators thank the gods. Some comply eagerly. Some comply because surviving regimes is their actual profession. A few remain cold and silent, but the machine overall accepts the lie, and that may be the most consequential moment in Nero's life, not the stabbing, the reaction after. Because what does a ruler learn when he commits one of the oldest imaginable taboos and the state rewards him with gratitude? He learns there may be no real wall left, no sacred boundary, no act so obscene that power cannot launder it. That lesson poisons everything that follows. Now the story widens. His wife Octavia is later discarded and killed after staged accusations. Seneca, once the philosopher of moderation, is eventually ordered to die. Burrus is gone. Poppaea, the woman who helped intensify the break with Agrippina, also dies violently after Nero allegedly lashes out in a domestic rage while she is pregnant. Rome burns, or at least Nero becomes forever tied to its burning in popular memory. The palace grows larger, the ruler grows stranger. Performance replaces restraint, spectacle replaces legitimacy, and through all of it hangs the shadow of the mother. Suetonius says Nero was tormented afterward, hounded by conscience, visions, and the sense that Agrippina's ghost would not leave him. Whether every detail is literal hardly matters, the image is psychologically believable. Men who kill for freedom often discover the dead do not stop occupying space just because their bodies are gone. That is the trap he built for himself. He thought removing Agrippina would create a clean self. Instead, it made her permanent. Because before her death, he was the emperor trying to escape his mother. After her death, he became the man who had killed her. There is no costume that covers that. Years pass, revolts grow, support thins. The performer king who wanted applause can no longer direct the audience. And look at the symmetry. Agrippina built Nero through theatre, timing, and manipulation. Nero loses the empire because theatre eventually stops working when reality arrives armed. In 68, abandoned and cornered, he flees. The Senate declares him an enemy. The empire he treated like a stage finally turns off the lights. When the end comes, he cannot even manage the last act cleanly. He needs help to die. So what was this story really about? A monstrous son? Yes. But not only that, a mother who weaponized her child for power. Also, yes, this is why the story grips people 2,000 years later. It refuses easy innocence. Agrippina was not a saint destroyed by random cruelty. She was brilliant, ruthless, politically ferocious, and still, when the machine turned on her, the violence feels shocking. Nero was not born in a vacuum. He emerged from a world where family with strategy and tenderness could be staged for witnesses minutes before murder. And that is the part that feels modern. Not the togas, not the villas. The psychology. How often do ambitious people create systems they later cannot control? How often do parents shape children through pressure, performance, and projection, then recoil when those children become emotionally unrecognizable? How often do institutions excuse monstrosity because it arrives wearing authority? Rome called it empire. We would call it something else. But the mechanism is familiar. Build someone to win at any cost, and eventually they stop asking what anything costs. Agrippina built a son fit for a vicious world. Nero became exactly what that world rewarded. Then he pointed it back at her. That is why the ship matters. That is why the swim matters. That is why the letter matters. Not because they are random dramatic details, but because they reveal the final shape of the relationship. She still thought intelligence could manage him. He had moved beyond management. She was still playing for control. He was now playing for erasure. And that difference kills her. One more uncomfortable truth. Agrippina's silence after surviving the shipwreck is often read as calculation. It was. But it may also have contained the last illusion powerful parents cling to when they look at the damage they helped create, the belief that somewhere inside the adult monster, the child still exists and can be negotiated with. What if that was the final mistake? What if the moment she sent that restrained message instead of a public accusation, she was not merely acting as a stateswoman, but as a mother hoping some fragment of the son she made was still reachable? If so, the tragedy gets darker, because he answers not as a son, not as a frightened boy, not even as a rival. He answers as a regime, and regimes do one thing exceptionally well. They turn private terror into official paperwork. Before we close, if you want more dark, high-stakes history told with this level of tension, hit like, subscribe, and join the History and Fact. This channel is built for the stories that make empires feel human, violent, and impossible to forget. So here is the image to leave with. A woman drags herself from black water after surviving the emperor's trap. She knows who did it. He knows she knows. For a few hours, both are still alive. And somewhere between that shoreline and her bedroom, history hangs on a final question. When power and blood are the same thing, who can still afford mercy? Agrippina's answer was silence. Nero's answer was steel. And Rome, disgustingly, accepted both. That is why this story endures. Not because one man killed his mother, because an entire political world made that murder usable. He thought the crime would end her. Instead, it explained him.